Hello, Motorrad World fans, and welcome to Talking MotoGP Motegi with myself, Rob Portman, and I'm very pleased to announce that I'm once again joined by my good buddy Paul Scott, all the way from Bagnaia in South Africa. He's got power, he's got internet. Hey, the world's a better place at the moment. Looks like they're in South Africa, hey, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Yeah, you're not going to believe it, Rob. I think this is the second consecutive day that we've had no load shedding. So yeah, things are looking up here.
Ooh, that's
the small mercies.
Yeah. So we're going to keep this short and sweet because there's a rugby game coming up in about an hour's time. So we're going to keep it under that hour bracket. And obviously everyone wants to go watch Jacques Callis and Hansi Cronje and all those guys play that sport where you throw the ball backwards to go forward. I hope South Africa can score a lot of touchdowns and a lot of baskets and whatever they do in that game. But yeah, we'll keep it short and sweet so the green and gold can go do their thing.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic. I think that's very considerate of you. But you know, this is MotoGP. If you want to watch rugby, join the Talking Rugby chat, eh? Yeah, no, let's round it up before the rugby.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people already joining. El Camino, John McLaughlin, Wayne Taylor, Sean and Ronnie Good. Hey, Sean and Ronnie Good, all the way from the UK here. My good friends, Daryl Bryce, Craig Hicks, Jason Harrington. We're going to jump straight into it. Paul, I must say I'm feeling a little bit exhausted because it was another fantastic weekend of not only MotoGP racing, but there was World Superbikes in Portimao, the penultimate round there. And there was also British Superbikes in Donington. And let me just tell you, things are kicking off. In British Superbikes, the title's between Tommy Bridewell and his teammate, Glenn Irwin. And in one of the races, I think it's the race number 2, Tommy Bridewell T-boned his teammate, and his teammate got up and ran and wanted to murder each other. And there's big cock in British Superbikes. But anyway, that was quite emotional and quite a lot to take on. And then I watched the World Superbikes, which was fantastic. Top-Rack Razgatlioglu just giving it to Alvaro Bautista, but Bautista, credit to him, you know, using his asset, which is a very fast Ducati underneath him with his small frame, but he was there, and it was I think Top-Rack lost out by 0.1 of a second in the sprint and the second race. But what it reminded me of today, well, there's a couple of things that I just want to quickly mention before we go on to MotoGP, is that it reminded me of another Yamaha Ducati battle way back at Laguna Seca, a certain Mr. Rossi versus Casey Stoner, where Rossi just had to do crazy things to keep himself in the fight. Very much what Top-Rack was doing today against Alvaro Bautista. He lost the fight, unfortunately, whereas Rossi won it. But the second thing that I took note of is watching Top-Rack in action today. And people, if you did watch it, leave me your comments down the side here. I watched that and I think, Yamaha, you idiots. How could you let a talent like Top-Rack Razgatlioglu? I know there was this, can he make the transition from Superbikes to MotoGP? And he had the test. No. The guy can ride a motorcycle. The guy's exciting. And why not just put him in there? What have you got to lose? What have Yamaha got to lose at the moment? A Cal Crutchlow riding at the back of the field. Even if he didn't want to sign for the factory team because of Monster Energy and Red Bull, give him his own team. Pull out an M1 for him and just put Top-Rack on it. Because the guy today proved how committed he is, the talent that he's got. He shouldn't have done today what he did on his Yamaha, and he was right in there. So I, for one, am very, very upset that we'll not see Top-Rack Razgatlioglu probably ever in MotoGP.
Yeah, Rob, I think Yamaha certainly missed a trick. We've spoken about it in the past. You know, when you think that Johnny Ray dominated for those 5 or 6 years, no one could get close to him. And then suddenly Top-Rack beat him. And Top-Rack consistently has given Bautista a hard run on certainly a bike that is probably 5-8% down on what the Ducati is as an overall package. Very similar to MotoGP. Yet Top-Rack is there consistently. He very seldom makes a mistake, and he's as hardcore as anyone out there. He's not scared to bang handlebars, rub fairings, put his front wheel against your shoulder. He'll race with the best of them. And I agree fully with you. They missed a big trick. They could have put him on a bike, sorted out the if it is the Monster Red Bull issue, sorted that out somewhere along the line. Remember in the early days when Rossi jumped on the Honda, there was no sponsor for him. So they put him on that Nastro Zero on the 500 in those days. Yamaha should have done something, because I have absolutely no doubt after one season, would have taken him time to learn, would have got some good results. But after one season, he certainly would have been probably the top Yamaha rider.
Yeah, we'll definitely do a Talking World Superbikes where I've got a couple of other guests as well to introduce there that are World Superbike crazy. So we'll definitely do a segment because I think that deserves its own time. This is very much talking MotoGP, and you'll see we've got a nice border around our broadcast here today. We are very pleased to announce that Ridgeway Race Bar is sponsoring the Talking MotoGP going forward. So big thank you to Grant and his team from Ridgeway Race Bar. If you haven't been there, even if you live in Cape Town or all over the place, wherever you do in South Africa, get down to Ridgeway Race Bar. It is the best place, not only in South Africa, but in the world to watch MotoGP live on the big screen TVs. If you can't be at the actual racetrack, Ridgeway Race Bar is the second best place to be there. Karian Pretorius is joined us. Good evening, Karian. How are you doing? Keep up the beautiful write-ups that you do. If you don't follow it, it's called, I can never remember what it is, and just quickly give her a little shout out. It's Karian. Just put your link up there for everyone to go read. She does kind of post reviews after every day's sessions and everything up on her Facebook page. A really good read, so go read that. Ati Herbs, thank you for joining us as well. So MotoGP, Paul, let's start in the small class with the Moto3s. Got up early this morning. That's why I'm also feeling a little bit tired. You know, it was a 5:30 this morning to get up in the UK to watch that, but didn't disappoint. I was so worried I was going to put it on and fall back to sleep. You just couldn't in that race. It's great to see that these youngsters, with everything going on in MotoGP and long lap penalties and MotoGP riders getting it wrong, these youngsters in Moto3 are getting it right. There's some times where maturity doesn't come into it, but there's times where it does. And today was a great battle of kids going flat out, just going balls to the wall, flat out, no matter where they are in the championship, no matter if it's my friend off the track or whatever, they go flat out and they just produce great racing. And today was another fine example of that.
I would like to know personally what the relationship between Holgado and Onchu is off the track. Are they mates? Do they talk to each other? Because the way they raced each other today, you would swear they're sworn enemies. Rossi Stoner, Rossi Gibbernow, Rossi Marquez kind of guys. Because there was no quarter given, none taken. It was actually unbelievable racing. Massier, they gave him a gap, which I think he would have won anyway, but they gave him that, 0.3 of a second or even half a second, and he was gone. What a fantastic race. As we say, those guys who are, all four of them were in the championship or are in the championship hunt, 3 or 4 points between first and third, and they raced from start to finish. I think that was really, obviously, Moto2, a bit of a procession. That Moto3 race was the highlight for me, just because of the way it was the 4 championship contenders giving it stick from start to finish. And the commentator said Onchu's crash was his first non-finish. I stand to be corrected, 44 Grand Prix. That, to me, I didn't know that. I thought he crashed quite a lot.
Yeah.
That they said 44 consecutive finishes. Well, that's a fantastic record. Didn't say all points finishes, but he finished that many. Fantastic for a guy who races as hard as he does. Yeah, that was really, yes, that was a standout race, one of the better ones.
Yeah, he was maybe the blip. I mean, Deep Sea Diver Smith says, Onchu rode like a bit of a chop. And Onchu's one of the bigger characters. He kind of like a Darren in Moto3. You had to override to keep up with some of the youngsters. And Onchu does do that more often than not. I'm excited to see him go up in Moto2 because he's going to have to bring it back down to earth a little bit. You can't ride a Moto2 or you can't ride in Moto2 like that. But either way, yeah, he does do some silly things every now and then. He's the one that kind of breaks the maturity more often than not. But anyway, very exciting. Moto3 is just flying the flag. It's a fantastic championship, and long may it carry on that way. Moto2, as you said, very boring. Can't take anything away from the Honda Asia boys, Chantra and Onchu. They went away with it. Pedro Acosta doing what he needs to do, get points. Tony Arbolino, and this is again that mindset thing that we were talking about last week. The mindset. Tony Arbolino, since the decision came out that he wasn't going up to MotoGP, he's kind of like collapsed. It was kind of like a kick in his teeth, a kick in his confidence to say, listen, you're maybe not good enough yet. We're looking elsewhere. And it really affected him because he's just dropped the ball. He's just, Pedro Acosta is being handed this on a silver platter.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. Acosta, look, I think he's the class of the field anyway. So you can't give him an inch. He's going to take 50 yards. So I do agree with you there. Obviously talking about Darren, I think you've had a chat to him or he listens to our podcast because definitely he's riding. He looks fantastic. He looks smooth. He's racing with guys. If you have a look at the guys who finished in front of him, they are all legitimate title contenders or race winners. They could win on any given day. Maybe take Obviously, today, Honda Asia out of the mix. They're not that consistent. But then you've got all the guys ahead of him who are serious racers. And he was right there. I think he finished 4.5 seconds off of Pedro Acosta, which was fantastic. Great ride by him. Steady, consistent. From what I saw watching all the qualifying and practicing, he only had one little tip over. I think it was at the end of pre-practice 2. A small little fall in one, I think the second last corner. Other than that, he looked great. Stringing the rides together, getting the points. Yeah, to me, he's matured and he's really looking good and moving forward. And I think that's very good for his confidence.
Yeah, building up the rhythm, exactly like you said, what we knew, what everyone kind of knew. Darren just needed track time. He needed laps to build up the momentum, and it looks like that's happening now. So Darren Binder, whatever you're doing, whatever you're eating for breakfast every morning, carry on doing it. That slow, steady progression. You don't have to go balls to the wall all the time. There's a talent in there. Just let it come naturally. Don't force it. And I think that's the big thing. And yeah, another great weekend for Darren Binder, just building up the momentum heading into the next couple of rounds. Fantastic stuff. Brenda Boehm says, yeah, did you get up for the practices yesterday as well? Brenda, I got up every single day early. And then I still played cops and robbers with my babies. I still played. I'm an exhausted man. But when it comes to talking MotoGP, I just liven up. I just get a spring in my step. Yaku, we are going to talk about all the rumors that are happening a little bit later on. We're going to just kind of get rid of the race review, although you say new rumors emerged about Dixon despite signing a Moto2 contract for 24 as a possible Honda rider in MotoGP, now that it seems that Marc Marquez is likely to move to Cressini. Yeah, we'll touch upon all of that just now. Let's get straight into the MotoGP race, Paul. Sprint race, fantastic. Straight off the bat this weekend. It was exciting. I was excited to see KTM, Brad, and Jack try the carbon frame that Danny Pedrosa had put to such good use at Misano. From the word go, Brad looked really comfortable on that. He really did. He said it gave him the extra grip at the rear. Speaking to James Dent, who was our inside reporter in India and this weekend, hopefully he's going to join us just now for a little bit of insight there. But he was saying Brad just couldn't believe how light the bike felt, especially, flicking, transitioning, and Motegi, like that last chicane, and that there's a couple of points where you really got to flick it. And I remember watching the last couple of years that I went to MotoGPs and at Assen, where you got to turn it left and right quite fast, and some places like that. The KTM looked a little bit sluggish. Brad was physically having to throw that bike in. Looked a little bit easier for him this weekend. Certainly the rear grip was better this weekend, because straight away breaks the lap record. Fantastic. We set up for a great weekend. Qualifying doesn't go that well. Sprint race, fantastic launch, throws it in there, and then just pulls off a great podium. And then, unfortunately, in the race, Motegi does this. The heavens open up, the rain comes down, and it's kind of everyone's. It kind of becomes a free for all in many ways. And unfortunately, Brad got caught out. Very strange crash. And I know Sven Gruder put it on Facebook, and a couple of other people did that. Not a lot of track time on that carbon chassis in the wet. Sven, I don't know or Paul, I don't know if do you know if the second bike that Brad climbed on was running that carbon frame or the normal frame?
No, we don't know. And they didn't say anything about that. But saying that, he crashed as soon as he touched the brake. That's what it looked like. So was it a little bit more damp there? I watched it. Didn't look like he was on the white line or on the paint. So I don't know. I think it might have just been possibly a slick patch on the track where that was maybe a little bit more damp. I don't know. And I don't know whether he ran the carbon chassis. But certainly, as you say, that carbon chassis has made a difference. And we've discussed it, Rob. We're talking 1 or 2 tenths of a second here. To get that little bit extra grip per lap adds up. And you saw it in the sprint race. He looked comfortable. Yeah, Martin got that little bit of a gap on him, but he certainly, I think the longer race might have suited Brad had we had it in dry conditions. And just to show how good the chassis must be, look at Jack's result. Suddenly he didn't go from 4th or 5th back down to 14th or 15th. He got beaten up a little bit in the rain, but he looked way better on the bike than we've seen him for the last few weeks. So clearly that chassis is a big step forward, and that's what they need. They need it. We've said it all along. They need that big step, whatever it might be, and this looks like they're going definitely in the right direction.
Yeah, it is the right direction because, as you said, to roll it out and instantly gets, such good data, such a good feel was a real positive. Daniel McPherson asked the question, what happened to Brad in the pits? And it is a weird one because I watched it back a little bit later, and Brad entered the pits pretty much with everyone, Aleix kind of shoved it on the inside as they went into pits, which I thought was a little bit naughty. But anyway, fine. They get in there. So Brad was in the pits kind of with everyone. But by the time he came out, he really did lose a lot of momentum. And I wonder if, that crash also contributed to the fact that, he was pushing to try and make up that time, because he also, in the rain, it's about getting the heat in the brakes. And did he, I saw him pumping the brakes into turn one a couple of times. And so I don't actually know what happened there, but he did lose a bit of time. And it just looked like one hurdle after another. It just, it didn't look like a smooth progress, even though it was only 2 or 3 laps in the wet. It wasn't there for Brad in that race. It just wasn't meant to happen. Oh, have we lost Paul now? Have we lost Paul? Paul, tell your wife to get off the internet again there. Are you back?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I don't know what it is. Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, so I kind of got the gist of what you're saying in between the breakup there. But yeah, I don't know what happened to Brad. I didn't see a replay of anything. Aleix a little bit dodgy into the pit lane, but I'm getting a little bit tired of Aleix. He was the first to put his hand up when it started raining. Certainly becoming, to me, his attitude seems to be a little bit arrogant, but yeah, so not a great changeover by Brad, and maybe that's what put him under a little bit of pressure, and he was trying to get back to where he knew he should be. He should have been fighting top 3, definitely. So a difficult situation there.
It was, there's no doubt about it. Gordon De Beer, the overtake on Jack by Brad, no hard feelings. No, as far as I know, Gordon, there are no hard feelings. It was a hard move by Brad. Brad, I don't like that braking and cutting across people, but yeah, I don't think Brad did it on purpose. Sometimes when you brake that hard, the rear wheel's off and the bike kind of floats there and that. So, typical good hard racing move. Jack's done it many of times. Brad's done it. They know it's racing, so no hard feelings there. No doubt about it. Well, certainly I haven't seen anything come out of that. Jack would have known that Brad had the extra pace and that he was, pushing to go with Jorge Martin. Listen, the KTM's definitely something there. No doubt about it. Fantastic. That's brilliant. A couple of people commenting on, good to see Brad got up after that crash, because it's one of those crashes where it's straight impact, which is always nasty. So good to see that Brad was up and okay. Great to see him get back to the pits and, high five and kisses to his team, saying sorry there. So fantastic. Really happy with KTM and where the progress is going there. Talking about Aleix Espargaro, I agree with you. The wheels fell off last year as well when they went to the away races. His championship kind of unfolded, and it just seems to be happening again. And he lost his temper and he apologized for it. I don't know if it's maybe because he doesn't have his wife and kids there with him, and but he just seemed, like you said, he does seem to. Yeah, he flicks a switch, Aleix, and I said it last week. You want to be all time. You want to buy an Aleix Espargaro t-shirt, but there's that little bit that just stops you. You're a fan, but there's something that stops you, and it's that exactly what you said, that little bit of arrogance. But we spoke about karma last week, and it seems to be coming back, because Aprilia, India and this weekend, just nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, and okay, Maverick got punted off at the start. Bezecchi, I think he grabbed the front brake and it just locked up, but luckily it kept going straight. It didn't spit him off. That's what it looked like to me. Yeah, and he did punch Zarco and Maverick off the circuit. Maverick very lucky to get back in on the restart, but also nowhere on the whole weekend. The best at one stage, the best Aprilia was Raul Fernandez. He seems to be adapting more than some of the other guys. Whatever the issue was with Miguel Oliveira, I don't know, because also he was going nicely. Then, he got past Mark, and then suddenly he just went backwards. And remember, last week, Aleix's bike was a problem, and the week before they had mechanical. So are they getting little mechanical gremlins now that I'm presuming they're running on engines number, what are they allowed for the year? 7. So they're probably on engines 5 and 6 or 6 and 7. Is that the issue? I don't know. Because obviously they're not going to come out and say, oh, well, we had an engine problem. They're going to hush that up. But that's what it could be for Miguel, because now it's, Aleix last week, him this week.
Yeah, Aleix's form, even in the rain, is puzzling. Aprilia is just a puzzling exercise at the moment, because they looked so dominant just a couple of weeks ago at Catalunya, but they just, they go from here to here. There's just no middle ground. It's like a fall from grace, and they've got they seem to have the riders that have that kind of mentality as well. Maverick is up and down. Miguel Oliveira is up and down. Aleix is probably the most consistent one. Ralph Fernandez hasn't really cracked it. I'm still have a huge question mark on Ralph Fernandez. It's a funny camp. A couple of people saying, as Vinales rubbed off on Aleix. Probably. I like this comment though. Sean Hepburn, love Carl's comments on the truck parade when he asked Mark, do you know that song, Should I Stay or Should I Go? Was it Carl or was it Jack that asked him? Because he even said, let's ask, where are you going? What you doing? Tell us what you're doing. And he says, I'm coming to your house. I like that, I must say.
Yeah, whoever posted that, it was fantastic because at least Mark's got a sense of humor. He just started chuckling. So, very good to see that. Yeah. And now, I don't know if you heard the comments speaking about Cal. Cal said, don't get Mark on that Ducati, because if you put him on the Ducati, everyone else might as well stay at home. So I've been a very firm believer that I think Marc Marquez is probably the best MotoGP rider we've ever seen. Take it or leave it. Everyone's got their own opinion, but he's moved the goalpost. There's no doubt. But he's had 3 very bad years. Injury, bike's not great. And those first 4 laps of today's race, I was thinking, maybe he has lost it, because normally in the wet, he gets straight to the front and he'll pull a 3-second gap. Here, he got passed by Bagnaia, then he got passed by Aleix, then he got passed by Oliveira. But suddenly it seemed a mature Marc Marquez, where once he found the grip level, he started going forward. And I would have liked to have seen the additional 12 laps in very difficult conditions where he's feeling more confident. So certainly he put that little bit of doubt that I was having, that maybe he has lost it. Put that, I'm going to say, a little bit on the back burner. I'm not saying now suddenly he's the great I am anymore. But yeah, interesting to see that. I think he redeemed himself to a large extent within the fold of being super talented and not just someone who's a bit of a has-been. So not that I'm suggesting in any way he is. I mean, his third yesterday showed that, he's prepared to put his gonads on the line when he has to. So certainly, I think that's it. And let's see what happens. And enough of this rumor, which I know we're going to chat about for 2 seconds. But yeah, let's see what happens with him. But I certainly think if he is on the Ducati, he will be a threat.
I agree with you, and like I said, we're going to touch on that just now, because it, of course, is a topic of discussion that we kind of just need to iron out at the moment. Daryl Bryce, Miguel Oliveira quitting again because of vision. Same thing happened last year. Not a good advert for the helmet company. And I agree with Daryl. I saw a couple of riders, Jean Mir, who, AGV is Rossi, AGV is the top of the helmet. Him and Bezzecchi, if you watch Bezzecchi very closely in that race, he never got comfortable because his vision. Miguel Oliveira, a couple of riders battling with vision there, with their visors. Listen, those conditions, you can't blame the helmet companies too much, because geez, those conditions were horrendous. Before we get into the Martin and Bagnaia, speaking about those conditions, obviously all the riders line up on the grid, slick tires, you're in Motegi, Japan. And this is where I look at it and go, right, my weather app on my iPhone is pretty good. If it says it's going to rain, okay, listen, I live in the UK, so it's not hard to get the weather wrong here. You just say it's going to rain and you're pretty accurate. But they've got the most sophisticated weather. So they would have known it is going to rain. It's going to rain, If I was a Taka Nakagami, Ralph Fernandez, Augusto Fernandez did well. He finished 7th overall. But if I was one of those guys, DJ Antonio, I would have started that race on wets. And so, you know what, let's give it a gamble. Let's start on wets. If it doesn't rain after 4 laps, or if it rains after 1 lap, which it did, can you think, well, everyone pitted and you were in that top 10 and you would have just cruised home. You would have just absolutely cruised home. Look, it backfired on Morbidelli and Carl Crutchlow. They went the other way. But I just think, sometimes if I was one of those, I don't want to say lesser MotoGP riders because they're all superstars, but one of the guys not in the championship, make a name for yourself. Go with that gamble. Put the wets on, start the race on the wets and make something happen. So I was very surprised no one did that.
Yeah, Rob, I think that's a very open-minded way of looking at it and thinking about it. Certainly, you're not going to get a Bezzecchi, a Martin, a Bagnaia thinking along those lines, because they've got a championship at stake. But quite rightly, let's just take Nakagami. I didn't even know he was in the race. Besides the fact that it was his home race, if he had been racing anywhere other than Japan, we wouldn't have seen him the whole weekend. So, yeah, a guy like him, why didn't he say to his team, listen, guys, put rain tires on, let's give this a go. The other side of the coin is maybe the team, maybe he did say that, or somebody, and the team turned around and said, yeah, but then if it doesn't rain, we're going to look like a bunch of clowns. We'll never, because there's a lot of pride at stake as well. So I think someone should have taken the gamble. Obviously, the gamble that Morbidelli took backfired on him in a big way. But at one stage, it almost looked like he was the only one who had made the right decision. And, hindsight's 2020. But I think your thinking would have been spot on for one of the guys who didn't matter if he came first or last, he was never going to win the championship. Front runners, different story. They've got to, like we've discussed in the past, whatever your opposition's doing, do the same thing, because then in worst case scenario, you're all in the same boat together. Everyone's looking for a small advantage to try and win. But sometimes you've got to play it cool and say we need the points more than we need to be a hero, which a guy like Nakagami, Crutchlow, some of the guys, Bradle, for example, could have done that and just given it a go. Would have made a super exciting race.
It would have. I just think that there was an opportunity there to be had, and no one really took it. On to the question here from Wimpy van den Berg. Good question. I think maybe Simon Crayfar is the best man. When we get him later in the year, we can ask him. Hi, Rob. The KTM guys said that they get more rear wheel grip from the carbon fiber chassis. Can you explain? So, I mean, Paul, I'm not the most technical guy, but, my thought pattern is a little bit more flex from the carbon frame. I remember speaking to Brad, over the years with his KTM, that the trellis frame that they ran, the 100% trellis frame before they went to the beam, which is currently, and then now the carbon, it just had a lot of natural kind of grip. It was a very solid, unforgiving, there's no flex in that chassis. So it loaded the rear up a lot. There was a lot of mechanical grip. So overloading the rear a lot, can just cause, you need a bit of flex. And that's where the Ducati works so well. You can see it. You don't need to be an engineer to see that Ducati flexing and working itself, correcting itself, and working with the rider. Whereas the KTM, up until this year, Jack and Portman started getting it sideways, and we saw Brad getting it more sideways, letting the riders ride the bike more the way they wanted to, giving the rider more feedback. And I think that's what this flex frame does. It doesn't fight the electronics. It doesn't fight anything. It just kind of plays along, and it just gives a little bit more flex for the rear to sort itself out, get the grip at once, and shoot out of the corners. And of course, the electronics, because the electronics play a big part. If you've got the stiff, unforgiving chassis that as soon as the tire starts spinning and the chassis gets into panic mode, then it puts the electronics and everything else into panic mode. This is a very, grade one kind of way I'm putting it. But for me, that's how I see it. I don't know, your thoughts?
Yeah, most certainly. So, Rob, I'm quite involved in the cycling industry in terms of I race quite competitively for my age category, and I love the technical aspect of bicycles. And I'm sure most people watching this podcast know all high-end bicycles today are carbon fiber. The real top-end bikes are handmade by the factories that make them, because what they do is they make, for example, at the headstock, same on a bicycle as a MotoGP bike, they need that to be a bit stronger. And down at what they call the bottom bracket, where your pedals are, where the power gets delivered, needs to be stronger. But the top tube between your handlebar and your seat doesn't have to be that strong. It's actually just a point to hold the bike together. So they make the carbon. The top-end bikes are made up of about 160 different pieces of carbon. Thick here, thin there, and by thick they'll put 2 or 3 layers as opposed to 1 layer, and different resins to make the carbon stronger or more compliant, they call it, flexible. Now, I think that's exactly what's happening with the MotoGP bike. With the trellis frame initially, now the beam frame, when it's on its side, the suspension is designed to work in a horizontal way. Mm-hmm. When it's on its side, now suddenly the forces are being dissipated incorrectly. When there's no give, like with the beam frame, or less give, when that guy cracks the throttle, 300 horsepower going through a 3-centimeter patch of rubber on the road, it's going to force that rubber to go somewhere else, not drive it. So I think that what they're doing now is exactly what we said. They can build that chassis that when the bike's leaned over, it can flex to what they need. They'll know. Their computer designers will know exactly where they need it to flex. So I think certainly this is prototype number 1, probably the 10th or 12th chassis Danish tried, but this is definitely the way forward for them, because everyone else has tried it, and it certainly works with the Ducati and the Aprilia to a large degree. I think they ran it a few weeks ago, tried it.
Yeah, let's see where
So,
this
yeah,
goes. I think it's a very interesting point, for Danny Pedrosa to do what he did on it, especially with a lightweight rider. I always thought, lightweight doesn't always translate to fast lap times, and that, like you said, there's a balance to it all, and I think they're still working on that. So there's only going to be positive progression from here. There's no doubt about it. Stephen Berry, the Sunday time slot isn't great. Stephen, demerit for getting in here late, but I don't know this. Come now, this is unacceptable, Stephen Berry. Stephen's catching up now.
Stephen, sorry, I don't know you at all, but yes, it's a problem when we let in a soccer ref interfere with MotoGP. We might have to have a discussion with the ref.
No, listen, don't make me get my whistle and my cards here. I'll ban everyone here. Paul, let's move on to two riders that you just have to be so impressed with. Jorge Martin, he's gone on the record saying, you know what, pressure's not on me. I don't have to win the championship. I'm a privateer, factory rider on a privateer, so I don't have to. Pecco does. And we spoke about it, was it mind games? Was it a bit of arrogance? What was it with Martin? And it seems to have worked. I think the mind games seem to have got into Pecco. Listen, Pecco being run over by Brad unexpectedly kind of threw a spanner in the works for Pecco, and it's been damage limitations for him literally so far. The worst thing that could have happened for Pecco was the timing, because it's just as Martin is now clicking with that bike. And Martin, speaking of Martin, he's exactly, I have the same relationship as I have with Aleix Espargaro. It's a love-hate relationship. I respect the guy, and I'm a fan of him most times, but I won't go buy his T-shirt, and I won't wave his flag. But I'm a fan because you have to be a fan of anyone with that amount of speed and that. But he has this arrogance to him sometimes, even sometimes when he's about to be interviewed and he's looking away, and then there's just little things that irritate me about Martin. But when he rides a motorcycle, I mean, the guy, and to come out this weekend again in the sprint race with all the talk of the championship, him going for a MotoGP championship, yes, on a factory Ducati, but in a privateer team, an independent team, should I say. All that talk just doesn't faze him. Throw in wet weather, throw in everything. The guy just somehow keeps his cool. And he still goes out there. He doesn't think championship. He goes out there, rides around the outside of guys in the rain, and he puts it up the inside. He runs wide. And then I thought, when he ran wide, I thought, geez, is he going to maybe just put it back a little bit? And no, off he goes and passes everyone again, gets to the front, takes the risk, even though he's in this position. So I was very impressed with Jorge Martin to show that speed, that commitment, despite everything that's happening in the championship, and it was fantastic. And in that sprint race, I mean, if that guy launches, he's Jorge Lorenzo-esque. If he launches and gets to the front of that, you ain't going to touch the guy. You ain't. Yeah. I mean, Brad said it in his post-race interview. He just said the guy he doesn't make a mistake. He's just relentless. Yeah. I mean, there's a Brad Binder sideways, pushing as hard as he can, and Martin's just boom, 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 boom. So touching on Martin, man, the guy was so good.
Rob, I'm going to say he's riding like Pecco was riding up until he had that high side in Barcelona. Pecco, up until then, the last 4 or 5 races before Barcelona, he was doing exactly that. He looked like a man who had no pressure. The lap times looked like they were coming very easy to him. Someone would go faster than him in a session. Oh, you're going to the pits, do whatever, come out and suddenly knock 2 or 3 tenths of that time. Looked like it was coming very easy to him. Barcelona, I think, was a little bit of a concentration issue for him. When I say concentration versus I've got this in the bag, I've got the whole shot, I'll run away, and just lost concentration for that split second, threw him over the high side in a big way. That accident was 100% his fault. He can't say someone tagged him. So, and that's dented his confidence. Then his biggest rival has now got a heap more confidence. Like you say, I think we should relate Martin to the way Lorenzo won when he won the championship in 2010 and 11. Picture perfect, never put a foot wrong, just put the bike exactly where he wanted to, wet, dry, didn't make a difference. And suddenly Martin, who I've never rated him as someone who's consistently good, he's looking like it's just coming so easy to him. I mean, look, Brad set the all-time lap record. Martin knocked 4 tenths of a second off that. A record that had stood since 2015 or 2016, and a Lorenzo record at that. And he just made it look, he thought, well, if that's what Brad can do, I'll show you what I can do. So this is the guy, as we've discussed. The confidence is really up there. He's always had the speed. He's always had the talent. Now he's doing what Pecco was doing a few races ago. He's stringing it all together. And we've discussed it before. Pecco seems to be a rider that when his head's not 100%, he seems to struggle. Is a relative term. I mean, he got fantastic results this weekend, 3rd and 2nd. But he's under big pressure. He's seen a 50-point lead down to, 3 points. And the way things are going now, he must be thinking, yes, what am I going to do to beat Martin? When Martin's thinking, if I just do what I'm doing now, I won't say it'll be easy, but it's a done deal.
That's exactly so. I'm just replying here. There's a Summer Johnson person causing all kinds of chaos in the things. Yeah, I have blocked that person, Stephen Berry and Sean and everyone, so don't worry about that. I fully agree with you on Martin. It's just, he's just riding as a guy that's just with no pressure, but there is pressure, and this is what I'm trying to get my point of. There is pressure, and for him to go out there and do that and perform the way that he did this weekend with everything happening, I was so impressed with him. And the same can be said for Pecco Bagnaia. I do feel the same with Pecco because there's more pressure on him. He's been loaded with the pressure from Martin, Ducati. Everyone knows there's more pressure. You're the champion. No one recently in MotoGP has been able to back up a MotoGP World Championship. Everything that's happened, but I love the fact that Pecco also just in the wet, Alesia's passing on the inside. He hangs it around the outside. He shows commitment. He shows desire. He's not going to give up. He's not going to just. He really just pushes and he goes for it. And what I also really have to tip my cap off to Pecco is after the race. It's a handshake to Martin. It's a very respectful guy. There's none of this. In the sprint race, on the sprint race podium, there was a little bit of, it was like a little handshake, but no kind of visual contact in that. And I still thought, are things going to start boiling here? But then Sunday comes, and then there's Pecco goes up to Martin. Well done, fantastic. So I'm very impressed with Pecco. He's a worthy champion to me. He's just. Pecco went through the stage. We were saying 2-3 months ago, Pecco's the fastest guy in MotoGP. You can't stop him. Yeah. And now Martin's that guy. So Pecco, Charmaine Fulham, I am sorry we've moved it to Sunday night. We'll talk about this at the end. Maybe we can either do it Sunday nights or Tuesday nights. We're going to have to debate about this because a couple of people not happy with Sunday, but we'll talk about that just now. But yeah, Pecco, I'm very, very impressed with Pecco. He's doing what he needs to limit the damage at the moment, but what is he going to do? What is he going to do to beat this guy?
I think so. One thing, Martin's certainly showing that supreme confidence, and he doesn't show it, which is fantastic. And he is under. There must be such pressure, but he's dealing with it like someone who either doesn't feel it or doesn't care. Doesn't care in the terms that Pecco's supposed to win the championship, not me. So if I happen to win it, well, whoopee for me kind of attitude. I don't know. Pecco, and please, I think he's fantastic. I think he's the most worthy champion we've had for a long time because he comes across as such a humble, pleasant, Brad Binder-esque type guy that you could go and have a meal with him at a restaurant and you'd have a laugh and a joke and there'd be no issues with him. He comes across as that kind of guy. When we say he's struggling in relation to the other Ducati that's giving him a hard time. Everyone else is getting put in their place by these two guys. So exactly that. I think he's dealing with it in a very good way. He doesn't look like he's under pressure. He doesn't look like he's buckling. But week after week, 5 races in a row, he's lost points to George Martin. Regardless of whether it's been 4 points or 6, 8 points, doesn't matter. Consistently, he's lost points. And he's down to a 3-point gap. In his head, he must be thinking, what do I have to do? He's not the kind of guy who's going to make big changes, I don't believe, or rush out and do anything silly. He's going to keep doing what he's been doing because it's been working, but it seems like what Martin's doing is working that little bit better. And like we've chatted both weeks in consecutive weeks now, what happens if it does come down to a final race showdown? That's going to be, I look forward to that because I'd sit on, as I said, I'd sit on that fence because Pecco will be the reliable, bring it home kind of guy, and Martin will say, well, listen, I'm going to beat you by 10 seconds or I'm going to go home in the bushes. So, yeah, it'll be fantastic.
I love that. Good to have Stephen Berry answering all the questions down the side. Yes, Stephen, I agree with your comment about if the race was in the dry. Dustin Tilleport says Pecco is coming across like a little spoiled brat, not getting his way and looks very miserable. Dustin, you got to understand why he looks miserable, because there is pressure. I don't think he's necessarily coming across as spoiled brat. Pecco, and I've seen it. My last year I spent 13 rounds in the paddock, seeing these riders week in, week out, and you get to see, the real side of them in a way. And Pecco on the Thursday, smiley, happy, autographs, pictures, right up until the Friday first FP1. Pecco's like it. Then he switches into I'm here to do a job, I'm here to race, and I get into that mode. And riders that approached things differently. You look at Rossi and Lorenzo. Lorenzo was the shutdown, I'll scribble on your thing, don't give fans much attention. I'm here to race and get my job done. Stoner, in a way, like that as well. And then there was the Rossis that could balance that different, balance all that between satisfying fans and going out and doing the job. So some people that's how they've got to attack their race weekends. And Pecco is like that. He does. The first couple of races I was in there, he came across as, tick at the spoiled brat guy, and just what a miserable guy. But you've got to look at it, and like I said, I learned a lot from being in that paddock last year. You really do change your thought pattern, because you forget they're human beings at the end of the day, and this is their full-time job. This is their job. Imagine you were sitting and doing graphic design or something every day, and people were coming to you every 2 seconds. You'd also, hey man, I'm trying to work out. So we've got to. It's easy to sit and say, yeah, he's a spoiled brat and stuff, and he looks miserable. And I do agree, he does look a little bit more reserved. I'd rather use that word compared to because there's a lot of pressure on him. Pecco can say we're handling the pressure and there's no pressure. All he wants, there's pressure. There's pressure for Martin. There's pressure for every single one of them. And some of them handle it a little bit differently. Rossi was the king at handling it perfectly. Hello, fans, smile, wave. But I can tell you now, when that garage door closed, or when Rossi was by himself, there was stuff flying everywhere, and you know what I mean. It's just how it is. So I wouldn't go as far as saying he's a spoiled brat, but I understand what you're saying, Dustin. I do understand what you're saying, but there are different ways to look at it now. Other talking points from the race that I wanted to bring up. I mean, we can go through the results, but it was there for everyone to see. One thing that I saw throughout the whole weekend is, and this is the difference between Yamaha and KTM and where they are at the moment. KTM, Danny Pedrosa does a wild card at a track that he's done a few laps at this year, testing in that whatever, 2 4th place, brilliant. Danny Pedrosa, fantastic. Even when he did a Jerez, he was right in the mix, top 10, top 7, top 5, whatever. Yamaha. Now, Cal Crutchlow, they put Cal Crutchlow at Motegi because he's been doing testing there. It's in Japan. Great, cool. And I love Cal Crutchlow, and he looks fitter than ever. I mean, he's lost a lot of weight. I saw a picture with him in Alicia Spargo. Jeez, I mean, the guy's turning, you'll know, he's like turned into a professional cyclist. But I mean, he couldn't come anywhere near the top 10. He was a guy you forgot about. He was right at the back. And Yamaha, I saw that he was running a new exhaust system and a couple of other things, but Yamaha just nowhere. For Cal Crutchlow to be running at the back with the Bradles and the everyone else's, I mean, it's just such a poor showing. Never mind Quartararo and Morbidelli, who were just nowhere this weekend. It was just another clarification of how KTM have taken this leap forward, and Yamaha have just the demise of Yamaha.
Yeah, absolutely. And the tide seems to have shifted towards them. Like you say, Cal, he's done lots of laps there. He's done lots of laps there in the rain, he even said. So seemed to me he was more there to, and I mean, I'm really talking out of turn here, but more to socialize and catch up with all his mates than actually put in a day's work. Not to say he didn't. He really does put in the effort, I'm sure, when they're doing all their testing, but it certainly didn't come across like he was there to try and do what Danny did. Even Stefan Bradl, look, I think he's a different character, but when they do show him in the pits, he looks like he's taking it very seriously. The fact that he doesn't get great results is, I'm going to say, immaterial. He is their test rider, but Cal just looked to me like this weekend as, hey, boys, welcome back. Here I am. Let's have a Joel. See you on Sunday night at the party, wherever it's going to be. That was how it came across to me. The other two, the factory two Yamahas, okay, Morbidelli made a bit of a blunder today, but Quartararo was nowhere. I mean, for Mir, who's finished no races this year, to finish ahead of him is, that's saying something. Mir looked okay, not great, but I don't know. So the Japanese factories are in big poo. how they're going to get out of it, who knows? It just doesn't seem like they're making any headway. And I say that with all due respect to them. Take Marquez out of the equation, and Honda were absolutely shocking once again.
Yeah, it is. Let's get on that, because we've got 15 minutes left before Jacques Cullis and the rugby team go play and try and score some baskets. So Honda, Marc Marquez, there was rumor or talk that he was going to make the announcement this weekend. That was kind of dissipated before the weekend even started. Now, here's my take on the whole Marc Marquez things, because a lot of things came out of it this weekend. Steven, Sven, everybody in the comments, please let us know your opinion. For me, from the outside looking in and speaking to a couple of people on the inside, it's a done deal. He has signed with Gresini Ducati. Gigi Dall'Igna came out with a comment today saying he signed. It's just sorting it out with Honda now. And I think that is the delay. The delay now is getting himself out of his Honda contract. I don't think Honda want to get him out, or if they do, they're saying, right, there's consequences, there's money, there's a lot involved here with just canceling your contract. We have a contract for a reason. And the Japanese, contract to some, I could see KTM maybe a contract meaning not as important. Well, it's got meaning, of course, but I think with the Japanese, a signed contract is like a Bible in many ways. You've signed it, given us your commitment, especially in the form of Marc Marquez, who they have delivered their whole entire company and MotoGP project around. And I think it's literally a case of, right, Marc, you've signed for Gresini, that's fine, but it's not that simple. There's a contract here. So I think that's where all the delay and that's coming out. I think Marc's made the mind up, and I'm glad that Marc has, because we can't go another year like this. No matter what happens with Honda, they fired their chief technician guy. They hired this guy. That also threw up a couple of curveballs, because why are they firing these guys if Marc is leaving? But there needs to be this whole shift in Honda. With or without Marc Marquez, there needs to be a shift in Honda. Okay. So if Marc didn't make this move, it'll be the same thing next year. Oh, what if Marc was on a Honda? Carl's comments, if he's on a Ducati, he'll destroy everyone. So Marc must just do this, just so that we can have all these quick, because I'm tired of them now. Marc must go to Ducati and see what he can do. I'm excited for that. I'm really, really excited for that. My question is, with Ducati, and we touched upon it last week, how happy will Marc Marquez be with Ducati saying, here's a GP 2023, that's it. You don't get the latest launch device that we're going to produce for Pecco and Bez and Martin. You don't get the latest, you don't get the latest. So you deal with that bike, but that's your bike for the year. There's no upgrades and whatever. And look, Marc's going to love that at the beginning of the season, when, the others are still finding their feet and development, blah, blah, blah. But how happy is Marc going to be when Pecco and everything progress, depending on how the 24 bike does progress? And Marc's told, no, this is not Honda anymore. You're not the blue-eyed boy. You're in a satellite independent team, probably paying your way. So there's your motorbike, sit down, shut up. Yeah. And I have no doubt that Marc will be competitive on a Ducati. There's no doubt. But but it's fine. But our focus is Martin, Pecco. And if Ducati shift that, they're going to piss off Pecco and Martin, because they're going to be like, well, hang on. You know what I mean? So it's good for Ducati, but it could also be bad, because Gigi also, or one of the guys, came out and said, it's great that he's coming, but it could also disrupt the good rhythm and the good kind of working environment we have at the moment.
No, absolutely, 100%. And I agree with what you say, Rob. I think he'll get there. He'll be fine for the test that they do, whether the Honda even, let's just say he goes and Honda agreed to it. I can tell you one thing, I would be 99.9% certain. That test the day after Valencia, Honda are going to say to him, sorry, bud, you're contracted to Honda till the 31st of December, so you can go on holiday early. I would almost stake my life on it. They won't let him test. Okay, so let's say that he doesn't. He tests the first time in February. Sepang's normally the test. He'll be good. He was good this year at the test. Paul was good 2 years ago at that test. So anyway, that's irrelevant. He now races 2 or 3 races, and he gets a couple of podiums and a 4th and a 5th. And then, like you say, now Ducati give the upgrades to Martin and Pecco, because they're leading 1st and 2nd. Bez might be 3rd, and Marc doesn't get it. Mm-hmm. That's going to start causing problems. Unless at the beginning of the year or his contract says, that's what you get, and don't ask us for anything else. If he's signed for that, well, then he's going to be stuck with his finger where he doesn't want it. Mm-hmm. But on the other side of the coin is, are Ducati going to do that? If he's now lying 3rd in the championship, He's getting good results. Are they going to say to him, but we told you we're not giving you that? I hear what you're saying. It's going to upset the Martins and the Paco Bagnaias. And imagine how it would make a guy like Alex Marquez feel, or Luca Marini, who's still waiting in line for those upgrades. Now suddenly, so exactly what I think it was the Linea who said, we're going to upset the balance of Ducati. It's a chance I think they're prepared to take. I really do, because at the end of the day, they're there to win the championship. And first and foremost, Ducati want to win the constructors. Yes, they like to have the rider championship, but they want to win that first and foremost. And I don't think 3 years down the line, they're going to worry that they actually gave Mark an advantage over Alex Marquez, that is, and Mark won the championship or finished second or third. So, yeah, it's going to be a very contentious issue. I can tell you that right now, whichever way it goes.
It is. And Stephen Berry says he agrees with you, and he was thinking about that earlier with regards to the Valencia test. But I don't think Mark will be fussed about like that. As Stephen says, it's normally dodgy weather. It's one day. How much time do you honestly get?
One day.
The Ducati's a plug-and-play bike. Alex Marquez proved it this year. Yeah, he was unlucky with being taken out. Sometimes he did some stupid moves, but it's a plug-and-play motorcycle. There's no doubt about it. And that's why Mark is pushing it so hard. Some of the rumors that came out this weekend of Honda loaning him to Ducati because for his contract, and anyway, it's all just getting a bit too much now. This whole Mark, they just need to sort it out, because how do you? It's and I hate to bring football into all the time, but if you look at Man United, how do you expect to perform on track when there's so much going off? And this is what Honda need to do now. Mark Marquez does not want to be with you. Okay, yes, he's a contract or whatever. Do you really want a sappy looking Mark Marquez almost dissing your brand every time in press conference? No, you don't. So you move him on, let him go to Ducati, let him answer all these questions that we have. He could go there and fail and not go fast. And, the people that came out and said, he must retire and he's not as good as he thinks he is, or we think he is, and they could all be proved right and we could all be proved wrong. It's an exercise I think needs to happen. Because otherwise the questions, if Mark doesn't leave Honda, that question's always going to be there. It's just always, always, always going to be there. So I hope it ends soon. I hope the announcement can come out soon. More big rumors coming out is that Honda have approached Davide Brivio. They approached Massimo Rivola. And one that I was very surprised was they approached Maverick Vinales. Now, again, respect for Maverick Vinales. Great rider, phenomenal. I'll never buy a shirt and cap, but great rider, fast, very inconsistent. But if you want to hire Maverick Vinales to head up your project and develop your project, you are going way further back than you think you are. So I don't know what the thinking around that is. But Honda, they've made a big decision this weekend, getting rid of the one guy. So the wheels are starting to turn in this new direction. But, Davide Brivio, I agree with you. Touched upon it last week. He's, I think he's born in Formula One. He doesn't get recognized there. I think he would be a great plug in there. It's how much freedom he gets, there's a lot of good Europeans out there that Honda can get, but they're going to come there and say, right, well, I don't want to live in Japan. I want this, there's going to be terms and conditions, which the Japanese aren't normally very accommodating to. So, what did you make of all those? Maverick Vinales. I can understand Massimo Rivola because what he's done with the prep. Maverick
absolutely. Massimo to me would make sense. My first choice, I mentioned it last time, David Brivio. Come on, guys, throw the checkbook at him. Get him out of Formula One. He's with a team that's not going to win the championship. Put him back in MotoGP and put him with Honda. We saw what he did with Rossi at Yamaha. We saw what he did with Jean Mir at Suzuki. If nothing else, he has the people skills to deal with the issues that they might or might not have. That would be first prize. If I read that he signed with Honda, I think that would be 50% of their problems sorted. And Honda must do it before Yamaha do it, because I've said it before, when Yamaha get rid of Lynn Jarvis and put Davide Brivio there, that's going to be their turning point. Yes, they've got to get the engineers, they've got to change whatever thinking it is that's put them so far behind the Europeans and specifically Ducati, but they need to do something. Talking about Maverick Vinales, we've mentioned him before. That would be, to me, to coin a phrase, scraping the barrel, to put him in as your test rider. I would never, I think it is just a story. I think it's a rumor, but if that's what they are looking at, well, I would be shocked. They'll go nowhere. And as I said, I think it would be a slap in the face to Johan Zarco, because Zarco is hoping if Mark moves on, he'll kind of be the number one rider, which I think would be rightfully so. He's not going to suddenly win the championship for them. But now if they bring in Maverick, suddenly he's going to stay at LCR. He's not going to go to Repsol. And I'd be highly upset if I was him, if that rumor has any substance to it. So let's see how it unfolds. But yeah, I think that would certainly not be the solution to any of their problems.
Yeah, there's
in terms
so
of
many,
Maverick.
and this is why the Mark Marquez deal needs to be done. There's so many people waiting for this decision that Mark or Honda, whoever is actually holding, the ace up their sleeve and holding this all back, that there's so many other scenarios that rely on what they're doing, so that they must sort this out now, because it's playing on a lot of people. There's no doubt about that. The anthems are up in the Bok game, so we're going to try and finish it there. Last little talking point: Pedro Acosta came out with a big statement this weekend saying, I don't ever ride in Moto2, but I haven't been told where I'm going in MotoGP yet. Very concerning. That is still, I think, a question mark that's going to rumble on and on. I put a post up, which someone actually sent me out the paddock saying, Rob, this is actually a possibility. KTM could think about shifting Jack out. If the Mark Marquez ride becomes available, then they will shift him into Repsol. Then they won't feel so bad. It's like, listen, Jack, sorry, but anyway, here's another factory ride for you. And at first I was like, oh, cuck, man. But maybe.
That's something that would be a proper curveball. But me personally, I'd rather put Jack on that bike than Maverick. Neither of them are going to take it to where it needs to be. But if I had to choose, I think the lesser of the two evils would be Jack. Quite a good thing there. I don't know what's going on with Pedro Acosta, because 3 races ago, it was a done deal. He was moving to MotoGP. They were going to sort out a bike. There was no question about it. Obviously, they've now come across also quite a big stumbling block, whatever it might be. Someone's dug their heels in, whether it's Jack, Augusto Fernando, or Ralph Fernandez. We don't know. Paul, someone's dug their heels in and said, no, I've got a contract. I'm not moving out of here. Do something else. You guys wanted me. So I don't know what's going on there. He's now left with a problem. Obviously, the solution, if the worst came to the worst, they're going to tell one of the new guys that's on tour. I can't remember who the other guy is moving into that IO Moto2 team. They might say to them, okay, we got to renege on this or make a plan for you. You certainly don't want Pedro Acosta out of your fold, because if he gets dumped by KTM now, he'll be aggrieved. And he looks like the kind of guy who will drop his lip properly and say to them, well, that's it. You had your chance. I'm going to Ducati, KTM, Yamaha, Honda, wherever it is, and you won't see me again. So I think they need to deal with the situation and get him back on track on this championship and make him feel comfortable. And, I'd love to see him on the KTM. I think he's going to be a star of the future, one of the real future riders that we've got coming through Moto2.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's like the Honda situation. They just need to sort it out now. That's it. Paul, thank you so much again. We'll definitely, for the next race meeting, catch up a little bit more and dive into more. But it's been a great show. We can go now support the box and support JP de Villiers, and hopefully we can score a lot of runs and get a lot of wickets and do a fantastic job.
There we go, Rob.
But Paul, thank you everyone on the side. Thank you for all the comments. Hit the like button. Thank you for joining in, and go enjoy the box game. Go Boca. Hope you can do it. And Paul, I'll chat to you very, very soon.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Go Boca.
Cheers. Let's go Boca. Goodbye.
Cheers. All right. Cheers.